Hello, everyone. Welcome to our channel, where stories come alive and English becomes easy and fun to learn. Today's story is called The Library of Lost Things, written by Amjad. This is not just a story. It's a mystery, a horror, and a journey into forgotten history. But here's the exciting part. This story is told in simple, easy English so anyone can understand it, even if you're still learning English. So while you enjoy this chilling and exciting tale, you're also improving your language skills at the same time. Let's begin the story. Our story begins in a quiet town in Oregon, USA. Here, there's an old library that many people have forgotten. It's dusty. It's silent. It smells like old paper and rain. The library is run by a woman named Barbara Carter. She's 34 years old. She wears big glasses, keeps her brown hair in a bun, and loves books more than anything else in the world. Barbara has worked in the library for 12 years. Every day is the same. Check in books, sort the shelves, help the few people who still come. But one day something strange happens. She finds a door she has never seen before. It's in the far corner of the basement. The door is made of dark wood, with carvings of trees, eyes, and words in a language she doesn't know. There is no lock. Just a bronze handle. She pulls it open. Inside, she finds a small, hidden room. There are no lights, only candles that light up by themselves as she walks in. The room is full of books, but these books are different. Their covers are blank. No titles, no authors, only dates. One says, May 3rd, 1491. Another, December 10th, 1814. She picks one up. She opens it. It tells a full story about a war that never existed in her history books. A battle between nations she's never heard of. With names, dates, and letters. All in perfect detail. She's confused. So, she checks her phone. She searches the internet. She looks at the history section in the main library. Nothing. No mention of that war. No trace of those events. And when she looks back at the book, the last page now says, This event is now forgotten. Barbara feels a chill. What kind of library is this? And why are these books telling stories that don't exist anymore? That night she can't sleep, because she remembers the title of one more book she saw in that secret room. It said, How the World Forgot You. Barbara could not stop thinking about the hidden room. The candles that lit by themselves, the books with no titles, the missing history. All of it stayed in her mind. She did not tell anyone. She was afraid people would think she was going crazy. The next morning, she arrived early at the library. She walked quickly down to the basement. The strange door was still there. It looked like it had always been there. She opened it again and stepped inside. The candles lit up just like before. The air felt heavy, like the room had been waiting for her. This time she stayed longer. She looked at more books. She picked up one with the date April 17th, 1907. Inside, it told the story of a city that once stood in South America. The book said the city was called Alvarez. It was full of tall silver towers, clean energy, and people who lived in peace. Barbara was amazed. The book had pictures drawn in great detail. There were letters between scientists, laws, and even a map. But when Barbara checked online, there was no information about Alvarez. No articles, no books, no records. She checked the library's oldest history books. Nothing. When she looked back at the last page of the strange book, the words had changed. Now it said, "Forgotten by the world. Remembered only here." Barbara realized something frightening. These books were not just telling lost stories. When she read them, the stories were disappearing from real life. They were being erased. She remembered one book she saw the day before. It had her birth year on the cover, 1989. She had not touched it. Now she wondered, what if she did? Would something from her own life be erased? She left the hidden room quickly. Her hands were shaking. She told herself not to go back. But she also knew that the room was not finished with her. The next week, strange things began to happen. At first, they were small. People forgot names of famous leaders. Teachers mixed up dates in history class. One day, a visitor asked Barbara about a book on the French Revolution. She went to the shelf where it always was. It was gone. Not just missing. The entire section on revolutions was empty. She asked the other librarian, Mr. Thomas, if he had moved it. He looked confused. "What revolution?" he asked. Barbara realized he did not remember it at all. At home, she checked her school history books. They were blank in some chapters, pages torn out, sentences half-written. She felt sick. The more she read from the hidden books, the more the real world forgot. She was not just reading history, she was erasing it. But one part still made no sense. Why? Why was the library doing this? That night she had a dream. In her dream, she was standing in the hidden room. The books were whispering. Soft voices. Hundreds of them. One voice rose above the others. It said, "We remember what the world forgets, until we forget too." She woke up in a cold sweat. She knew she needed answers, and she knew she had to go back, even if it was dangerous, even if it meant losing more, because one of those books was waiting for her, the book with her name on it. Barbara could not stop thinking about the book with her name. She had not opened it yet. She had only seen it for a second on the lowest shelf, covered in dust. It was the only book in that room with a title. It said, Barbara Carter. No date, no picture, just her name written in old, dark letters. She told herself not to go back. But deep inside, she knew she would. She needed to understand what was happening. She needed to know why the world was forgetting. And she needed to know why her name was in one of those strange books. 2 days later, she returned to the secret room. This time she took a flashlight, a notebook, and gloves. She felt like a scientist entering a dangerous place. When she entered, the candles lit again. The room was cold. The walls seemed to be closing in. The books looked the same, silent, dusty, waiting. She walked straight to the shelf with her name. The book was still there. She picked it up slowly. It was heavier than she expected. The cover was soft, like old leather. Felt warm in her hands. She opened it. The first page had her full name, Barbara Marie Carter. Below that, it said, born 1989, remembered by few. She turned the page, told the story of her life, her childhood, her school, the day she broke her arm at age 9, her mother's favorite song, her father's old blue truck. Everything was there. Each memory was written like a story. Then something strange happened. As she read, she began to forget. She forgot her best friend's name from high school. She forgot the street she grew up on. She forgot the name of the town where she was born. She dropped the book. She sat on the floor, breathing hard. Her mind felt cloudy, like pages were being torn from inside her. She pulled out her notebook and wrote down the things she still remembered. Her age, her job, her favorite book, her cat's name. Then she looked at the book again. The words on the page had changed. Now it said, "These things are fading." Barbara backed away. She wanted to run, but she forced herself to stay calm. She picked up another book, just to see if it would help her understand. This book had a date, March 22nd, 1976. It was about a man named Henry Wallace. He had created a machine that could record dreams. His invention had changed how people understood the mind. The book was full of diagrams and tests. Barbara had never heard of this man before. She checked online again. Nothing. Not a single article. Not even a mention in medical books. She realized this man, this machine, this discovery had all been erased. Just like the city of Elvaris. Just like the war she read about earlier. Just like parts of her own life. She looked around the room. Was this library hiding the truth? Or was it stealing it? Barbara looked at the shelves. There were thousands of books. Each one was a lost story, a forgotten person, an erased memory. She thought about the voice in her dream. We remember what the world forgets. Until we forget too. She began to understand. This library was not just a place. It was alive, fed on memory. It collected stories and removed them from the world. It wanted to be the only one to remember. And the more she read, the more it took from her. She had to make a choice. She could stop now, leave the library and never return. Maybe she could hold on to the memories she still had. Or she could keep reading, keep learning the truth. But if she did, the world outside would forget more. And one day, maybe even she would be forgotten too. She looked down at the book with her name. The last page was still blank. But she knew it wouldn't stay that way for long. Barbara left the secret room that day feeling like something inside her had changed. The world outside looked the same, but it didn't feel the same anymore. The streets, the cars, the buildings, everything felt a little emptier, like a piece was missing. She walked home, but even her own house felt unfamiliar. She looked at a photo on the wall. It was a picture of her family taken when she was 10 years old. But she couldn't remember the name of the park where it was taken. She used to know it well. She opened her notebook and wrote down everything she still remembered. But the list was getting shorter. Her memories were fading slowly, like smoke in the wind. That night she couldn't sleep. Her mind was full of questions. Why did the library have this power? Who built the secret room? Why were the books trying to erase the past? And more importantly, what would happen if she finished reading the book with her name? The next day, Barbara returned to work. The library was quiet as usual. Mr. Thomas asked her if she was feeling all right. She just nodded. She didn't want to talk about it. She didn't think he would understand. She tried to work like normal, but something strange happened. A student came in asking for a book about World War II. Barbara led him to the history section, but when she got there, the books were gone. Not moved, not borrowed, just gone. She stared at the empty shelf for a long time. The student looked confused. "Didn't you have books here before?" Barbara wanted to say yes, but her memory was unclear. She couldn't remember the titles anymore. She couldn't even remember learning about that war in school. She walked away slowly and sat down at her desk. She opened the small notebook again. She looked at what she had written the night before. But now some of the words were missing. The ink had faded. Something was taking her memories even when she wasn't inside the hidden room. Later that evening, after everyone had left the library, Barbara went back down to the basement. She unlocked the strange door again. The candles lit up like always. But now the room felt colder, darker. She held her flashlight tight and walked toward the back of the room. She saw something new. There was a book lying on the table in the center. She had never seen this table before. It looked like it had appeared out of nowhere. The book on the table had no name, no date, nothing on the cover. Just a dark brown cover with deep scratch marks across it. Barbara opened the book carefully. The pages inside were empty. All of them, page after page. Nothing written. But when she touched the last page, words started to appear. They were written slowly, like someone invisible was writing with a pen. The words said, "She came back, even after the warning." Barbara stepped back. The room grew colder. The candles flickered harder. The books around her began to hum, like they were alive. She could hear voices now, not loud but soft, whispering. They said her name, over and over. She closed the book and ran to the shelf where her own book was kept. She opened it again. The pages had changed. Now it didn't just tell her past. It was starting to tell her future. It said, "She returned once more to the place of forgetting. She read what should not be read, and the world paid the price." She slammed the book shut and held it to her chest. She didn't know what to do. If she left it here, maybe the story would stop. Maybe the world would stop forgetting. But part of her wanted to know what came next. She put the book back on the shelf and turned to leave. But as she reached the door, she saw something on the wall. A message was carved into the stone. It looked old, written by hand. It said, "The first reader opened the door. The last reader will close it, but only after everything is gone." Barbara left the room quickly, her heart beating fast. She had more questions now than ever before. She now knew this. The library was not just erasing the past. It was trying to erase the future too. And somehow she was now part of its story. The next morning, Barbara woke up with a strange feeling. She remembered going to sleep, but not much else. She looked at her notebook, the one where she had written all her memories. Now more pages were blank. Her handwriting had faded, like it was being erased little by little. She ran to the bathroom and looked at herself in the mirror. Her face looked the same, but something felt wrong. She stared into her eyes, and for a moment, she couldn't remember her own middle name. Came back after a few seconds, but it scared her. Barbara knew she couldn't keep this to herself anymore. She needed help. She needed to talk to someone who might understand. But who could she trust? She couldn't just walk into a police station and say, "There's a secret room in the library that's stealing my memories." No one would believe her. Then she remembered someone, an old professor named Dr. Charles Reynolds. He used to work at the university library before retiring. He was known for studying strange events and ancient writings. Maybe he would believe her. Maybe he had even heard about this kind of thing before. She found his address through the university staff records and went to visit him. Dr. Reynolds was in his 70s, with white hair and large glasses. He lived in a small house filled with books and old maps. When she told him about the secret room and the vanishing memories, he didn't laugh. He didn't call her crazy. Instead, he listened carefully. Then he went into another room and came back with a very old journal. "This isn't the first time someone has found a library like that," he said. He showed her pages from the journal. It belonged to a librarian named Sarah Whitman, who lived in the early 1900s. She worked in a library in a small town that no longer exists. She also found a hidden room filled with books that were not recorded anywhere. Her notes said the same thing: the more she read, the more the world forgot. Towns vanished. Events disappeared. Even people close to her slowly stopped remembering who she was. Sarah disappeared in 1911, Dr. Reynolds said quietly. She was never seen again. The town was later removed from all official maps, and now nobody remembers it, except those who have read her journal. Barbara asked him if there was a way to stop it. Dr. Reynolds looked at her with sad eyes. "I don't know," he said, "but I do know one thing. Every time the library appears, someone finds it. And that person is always written into one of the books. You said there's a book with your name. That means it's chosen you. And if it's chosen you, then your story is already being written, whether you read it or not." Barbara sat quietly, thinking about his words. Then he added, "But maybe you have something the others didn't. You still have part of your memory. You still know what's happening. That might give you a chance." He gave her the journal to take with her. "Be careful. Don't read too much at once. Write down everything you remember and protect your thoughts. The library feeds on what people forget. If you hold on to your memories, it might not be able to take them." That night, back at her apartment, Barbara copied pages from Sarah's journal into her own notebook. She studied the warnings and underlined parts that matched her own experiences. She read one part again and again. The library speaks in silence. It hides in places of knowledge. But its goal is not to keep the truth. It wants to erase it, so it becomes the only truth. Barbara now understood that the library wasn't just dangerous. It was a living force with a purpose to control the story of the world by removing parts of it. She knew she had to go back. She couldn't run from it. She needed answers. She needed to know who built that room, why it still existed, and how to stop it. But this time she wouldn't go in unprepared. This time she would bring the journal, her own notebook, a voice recorder, and even a small video camera. She was going to record everything. And if the world forgot, she would find a way to remind it. Even if it meant the library would try to erase her next. Barbara waited until the library closed the next evening. She had packed everything she needed in a small backpack. Inside, she had Sarah Whitman's journal, her own notebook, a flashlight, a camera, extra batteries, a pen, and a voice recorder. She also brought sticky notes with simple words written on them. Her name, her address, her parents' names, her favorite food. She wasn't sure why, but she thought it might help her remember things if the books tried to erase her mind again. As soon as the building was empty, she made her way to the basement. The hallway was quiet. She walked slowly, carefully listening for any sound. The air felt heavier this time, like the library was waiting for her. She reached the door to the secret room and unlocked it. The same soft candles lit up the shelves as she entered. But something was different. The room was larger now. Barbara was sure it had been smaller the last time. There were more bookshelves, more books, and a longer hallway that stretched into the darkness. She didn't remember that being there before. She took out her voice recorder, turned it on, and started speaking quietly. I'm inside the hidden room. The space has changed. There's a hallway now. She held the camera in her other hand and began recording as she walked. The hallway led to another room, smaller but filled with round tables. Each table had one book on it, placed exactly in the center. The books were all the same size but had different covers. Some were plain, others had gold writing. One of them had her name again, but now there was another line below it. It said Volume 2. She didn't remember finishing Volume 1. She opened the new book slowly. The first page had a sentence that chilled her. She returns because she must, not because she chooses. Then the pages flipped on their own. They stopped at a chapter titled The Silence of Knowing. The words began to form in front of her, as if written by an invisible hand. It described everything she had done since leaving the library, even the talk with Dr. Reynolds. Word for word. She stepped back, afraid. The book knew everything. It was watching her. Suddenly, she heard a sound behind her, a soft whisper. She turned quickly, shining the flashlight toward the noise, but no one was there. Then another whisper came, this time from the shelf behind her. She listened closely. It wasn't just a whisper. It was her voice. The whisper was repeating something she had said earlier. The space has changed. There's a hallway now. It was coming from the voice recorder in her hand. She pressed stop, but the voice kept playing. Louder. Then the flashlight flickered. The candlelight dimmed, and the books on the shelves started shaking. Barbara dropped the recorder and grabbed her notebook. She flipped to the last page she had written on. The ink was gone again. She quickly pulled out Sarah Whitman's journal and turned to a page she hadn't noticed before. It was a warning. The books will speak. They will copy you. They will trick you. Do not follow the voices. Do not answer the questions. And never trust a second version of your book. Barbara looked back at the table. Her second book was still open. The words on the page had changed. Now they read. She ignored the warning. She followed the sound. And so the door opened wider. The room began to tremble. The hallway behind her seemed to stretch longer, darker. But Barbara stayed still. She remembered the warning. She closed the book and stepped back toward the door. Then she saw another person standing at the end of the hallway. It was a woman wearing old clothes. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear. She wasn't moving, just staring at Barbara. Barbara whispered, "Sarah?" The woman nodded slowly. Then she raised her hand and pointed to one of the shelves behind her. Barbara walked over and saw a book covered in dust. She pulled it down and read the title, The Last Memory. Inside there were only a few pages, but they were all written by Sarah. In it, she explained everything she had learned. The library could not be destroyed, but it could be closed for a time. And the only way to do that was to return a forgotten memory to the world. Barbara didn't understand at first. What did it mean to return a memory? Then she read the last sentence. Write what the world no longer knows and speak it out loud. Make someone else remember. Only then can the forgetting be stopped. Barbara took a deep breath and held the book tightly. She knew what she had to do. She had to find one lost memory, something the world had forgotten. She had to write it down, speak it, and make someone else believe it. Only then could she fight back against the library. Only then could she hope to stop the erasing of the world. Barbara walked out of the secret room holding the book called The Last Memory. Her hands were shaking, but her mind was clear. For the first time, she had a small piece of the puzzle. She now knew the library was erasing history, and the only way to stop it was by bringing back what had been forgotten. But she still didn't know what memory to restore. There were thousands of books in that room. How could she know which event had been truly lost? She decided to begin with Sarah Whitman's journal. Back in her apartment, she opened the old notebook and read it from beginning to end again. Slowly this time. Sarah had written about people she tried to contact. Historians, museum workers, even newspaper writers. Most didn't remember anything she told them. Some thought she was confused or lying. One name stood out. A man named Arthur Bell. Arthur had once been a teacher at a small college. According to Sarah, he was the only person who ever believed her. He told her a strange story about a village that once existed near the coast but had disappeared from all maps. No one remembered it, not even the people who used to live nearby. He believed it was one of the erased places. He called it Westbridge. Barbara searched for any information about Westbridge. She checked online, looked in the college records, even checked newspaper archives. Nothing. It was as if the place had never existed. But Sarah had written about it in detail. She had drawn a map, written the names of people who had lived there, and even described the houses. Barbara realized this might be the memory she needed to return. She made copies of Sarah's notes and created her own document combining all the facts. Then she called a local radio station. They had a small show where people shared strange or unusual stories. She asked if she could come in and talk about forgotten places. The man on the phone laughed a little but agreed. "Sure," he said. "It sounds fun. Come by Thursday afternoon." Barbara arrived at the radio station with her papers and the book The Last Memory. The host, Tim, was friendly and curious. She sat in front of the microphone, nervous but determined. When the show started, Tim introduced her as a writer working on strange history. Barbara began to speak. She told the story of Westbridge. She described the village, the people, and the events that happened there. She explained how it had vanished and no one seemed to remember. As she spoke, she read parts from Sarah's notes. She mentioned the library and how it was filled with books about forgotten events. At first, Tim smiled and nodded, but after a few minutes, his expression changed. He looked serious. I know that place," he said. "Westbridge. My grandmother used to talk about it. She said her sister lived there, but I haven't thought about that in years. I thought it was just a story she made up." Barbara's heart beat faster. "It was real," she said. "It was erased." Tim leaned forward. "I remember now. There was a white church on a hill. My grandmother used to sing a song about it. I haven't heard that song since I was a kid. Something was working. The memory was coming back. And it wasn't just Tim. After the show, a few people called the station. One woman said she remembered driving through a place called Westbridge many years ago. A man claimed he once had an old postcard with the name on it, but he couldn't find it now. Barbara realized something very important. Speaking the truth out loud helped others remember. She went home that night feeling stronger. She had done what Sarah's book had told her. She had written about a lost memory, spoken it, and helped someone else recall it. The library might not be happy about this, but Barbara didn't care. The next day, she returned to the library. She walked back into the secret room, holding the last memory. Something had changed again. There were fewer books. A whole shelf was empty. Barbara walked over to it and saw a small note stuck to the wood. It was written in Sarah's handwriting. "You brought it back. One shelf is saved, but many still remain." Barbara smiled for the first time in days. She knew what she had to do. She would keep finding lost events. She would speak their truth. And each time someone remembered, the library would lose power. The fight wasn't over, but she had won a small battle. And that gave her hope. Barbara now understood that the only way to stop the library from erasing the world's memories was to bring those memories back. She had done it once with Westbridge and it worked. But there were hundreds more books, hundreds more stories. And the more she thought about it, the more she realized something strange. The library wasn't just filled with lost history. It was almost as if the library wanted those stories gone. Like it had a purpose beyond just storing books. It was feeding on forgetfulness. She started spending more time inside the secret room. Each day after her normal library shift, she'd sneak in with a small notebook and a flashlight. She would pick one book from the shelves, read it carefully, and take notes. She had learned not to take the books out anymore, not after what happened the first time. The library didn't like that. One evening, she found a book titled The Bridge That Burned Twice. It told the story of a town called Elmridge, where a civil rights protest in the 1960s had ended with a tragic fire. The bridge where the protest took place was destroyed twice, once by accident and once by someone who didn't want the protest remembered. According to the book, Elmridge was once a symbol of peaceful resistance. But today no one spoke of it. There were no online records, no books in any history section. Elmridge had been wiped out of memory. Barbara wrote down everything she could about the town, its people, and what happened. She included quotes from the book, even drawing a map from its pages. When she left the secret room, she found a quiet corner of the library and typed the story into a blog post. She didn't include any talk about magical books or erased memories. She simply wrote it like a real historical article with dates, names, and quotes. That night, she shared the blog on a local history group online. Then, she waited. A few days passed. No one said much at first. But then, a comment appeared. "I think my uncle used to talk about Elmridge. Said it was the bravest town he ever knew." Another comment followed. "I remember that name. I once saw a photo of a burnt bridge with protest signs. Thought it was a mistake in the caption. Maybe it wasn't." Slowly, more and more people began responding. One woman posted an old newspaper clipping she had found in her attic. It showed the headline, "Elmridge Bridge Burns Again, Protests Silenced?" It was dated 1963. Barbara felt her hands tremble. She had found another memory that could be saved. Later that week, when she entered the secret room again, the book The Bridge That Burned Twice was gone. In its place, a single black feather rested on the shelf. Barbara didn't know what it meant, but she felt it was a message, maybe from Sarah, or maybe from the library itself. And then came the surprise. One morning, while shelving books, Barbara saw a woman standing at the entrance of the restricted section. She wore a long brown coat and held a small notebook, much like Barbara's. "You're the one who wrote about Westbridge," the woman said softly. Barbara nodded, unsure. "I've been watching the stories. You're not the only one who remembers," she said. "There are others. A few of us have known about this place for a long time, but most of us were too afraid to speak." Barbara's heart pounded. She asked, "Do you know about the library? About what it does?" The woman smiled faintly. "We call it the unwriting room. Some say it began during a war, when people needed to hide truth to protect lives. But it grew. It became something more. Forgot why it started. Now it only wants silence." Barbara asked if there was a way to stop it completely. "Not stop," the woman said, "but slow it down. Hurt it. Make it weaker. Every memory you return takes power away from it. You've done more than most. But you can't do this alone." She handed Barbara a list. Names and cities. All people who remembered something. People like her. Barbara looked at the paper. It was a beginning. She was no longer alone. She had joined something bigger. A quiet rebellion. A movement of memory. The fight to save forgotten truth had begun to grow. And the library, once a place of silence, now had something new inside it. A whisper of resistance. Barbara began to contact the names on the list the woman had given her. One by one, she called them emailed them, or sent letters when no phone number was found. Many of them had the same story, memories of people, places, or events that no longer existed in history books. Some were teachers, some were retired journalists, and others were just regular people who had noticed something wrong with the world. Some had kept quiet out of fear. Others had tried to speak up before but were ignored or told they were imagining things. Together, they formed a small network, calling themselves the Rememberers. It wasn't an official group, and there was no leader, but they all had the same mission: to bring back what the world had forgotten. Barbara became the one who kept track of their findings. She organized their stories, collected evidence, and helped them publish their memories online, always being careful not to mention the library directly. Each time they posted a forgotten story, something strange happened. The more people read it, the more real it became again. Old photos appeared in family albums. Mentions of events returned in small-town newspapers. People started remembering things they hadn't thought about in years. It was like the world was slowly healing itself. But it only worked when many people saw the story and talked about it. If no one paid attention, the memory disappeared again. But the library noticed. One night, as Barbara stayed late at the library, she felt a sudden coldness in the air. The lights above her flickered. Then the hallway to the secret room seemed longer than usual. The bookshelves around her stretched into darkness. It was as if the building itself was shifting, trying to confuse her. When she finally reached the hidden room, she found that many of the books were now locked behind a glass wall. A single line was carved into the glass. "You are changing the story." Barbara felt a chill in her spine. She knew the library was aware of what she and the others were doing. It was starting to fight back. But she also knew this was proof that their efforts were working. The library was losing control. Later, she received a message from one of the Rememberers, a man named Daniel from Chicago. He told her he had found a book in an old thrift store. It looked like a regular book, but when he opened it, there were no words inside. Only his own childhood memories written in handwriting that wasn't his. He was shocked. The memories described moments he had forgotten completely. His first day at school, his grandfather's voice, a lost family pet. He said reading the book brought tears to his eyes. Then, the words started fading from the pages as he read them. Barbara asked him to send photos. He tried, but by the time he took out his phone, the pages were blank again. They now understood the library wasn't just targeting public history. It was beginning to take personal memories too. Moments that shaped people's lives, their identities, their feelings, that made everything more serious. If the library could erase who a person was, then no one would be safe. You could be forgotten by the world, and then even by yourself. Barbara knew what this meant. The final book Sarah had left her, the one she hadn't dared to open yet, was likely not about a place or an event. It was about a person. And that person, as the title said, was her. How the World Forgot You. She wasn't ready to open it yet. But she knew she would have to, because the library wasn't just a place anymore. It was becoming a mind of its own, a living thing. And it had one goal: erase what matters most. Not just history, but the people who remember it. Barbara finally sat down at her desk one quiet morning and placed the last book in front of her. The cover was smooth, almost warm to the touch. Its title was written in gold, How the World Forgot You. She took a deep breath and opened it. Inside, the pages were not like the others she had seen. They didn't contain facts or historical records. Instead, they held stories, moments from Barbara's own life. But they were not told the way she remembered them. Some things were missing, some were twisted, and some were completely different. The book said she had no parents, that she had never lived in that town, that she had never worked in the library. It was as if the book was trying to convince her she didn't exist. She flipped through the pages faster. Her memories were fading from the paper, turning blank the moment her eyes touched them. Her hands trembled. A strange feeling grew in her chest, like her mind was being pulled apart. She stood up and ran to the mirror in the library staff room. For a second, her face looked blurry. Her name, which used to be printed on a tag on her chest, was gone. She turned around and rushed back to the secret room. She had to fight it. The remembers had taught her one important thing. Memories gain strength when they're shared. So she opened her laptop and began typing everything she remembered about herself. Every moment, every smell, every sound. Her first toy, her school days, the time she broke her leg riding a bike, her favorite book, her best friend's name. Then she shared it online, sending the link to all the remembers. She asked them to read it, talk about it, and help her hold on. For hours she waited. And then, slowly, something changed. Her photo reappeared in an old yearbook. A newspaper article about a spelling bee she once won popped up in a digital archive. A distant cousin emailed her saying, "I was just thinking about you the other day." The library grew quiet. When she went back to the hidden room, she saw that some of the books had returned to their original shelves. Others remained missing, but a few titles flickered like stars, half remembered, but not fully erased. She placed How the World Forgot You back on the table. The title faded. A new one appeared, The Girl Who Remembered. That night, Barbara locked the door to the secret room. She didn't know if the library would try again. She didn't know if she could ever fully stop it. But now she understood something powerful. The library didn't destroy with fire or violence. It destroyed by silence, by making people forget. But if people talked, remembered, shared their stories, and wrote them down, then history could survive. Truth could survive, and so could she. From that day on, Barbara became more than a librarian. She became a storyteller, protector of memory. She traveled to schools, old homes, forgotten villages. She collected memories, wrote them, published them, and taught others how to do the same. The remembers grew stronger, their stories reaching more people. The library still stood, silent, waiting. But now it was not the only keeper of the past. Because as long as one person remembers, nothing is truly lost. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the story and learned something new today. If you'd like to read the full story again or share it with others, you can download the PDF version of this audiobook for free. Just click the link in the description below and get your copy now. Keep learning, and stay tuned for more stories to improve your English. Happy reading!